Welcome to my review of Jurassic World, directed by Colin Trevorrow, an action-adventure movie that centers on a reopened version of the dinosaur-themed attraction Jurassic Park that was initially closed 22 years ago due to unsafe working conditions and casualties. Now, after being open and fully functional for 10 years, the currently branded Jurassic World has started to face a decline in sales, and as a result, the minds behind the park have secretly created an overwhelmingly powerful and intelligent new dinosaur species in order to revamp patrons' interest. But after this new species breaks free of its confinements, the park is sent into great havoc, and during this time of need, the park's operation manager turns to a dinosaur expert and raptor tamer to fix the problem, all the while tracking down her nephews who have been rendered defenseless on the resort. Now, I'm somebody who grew up loving the original Jurassic Park. It came out in 1993, I was born in 1992, and I got the VHS at a very young age. I was probably like 3 or 4 years old. Probably not the best age to be watching the film, because it's a film that did scare the living hell out of me, but at the same time though, it's a film that was filled with so much wonderment to the point where I was truly entranced by it. Albeit that looking back on it today, it does have its fair share of flaws, definitely, but technically it does hold up incredibly well, and it's one of those very, very few films from my childhood that I can still say that I do love. As for The Lost World, albeit I haven't seen it in a very, very long time, my memory of it is not all too great because I think it's just kind of silly, especially the part where the dinosaur attacking San Diego. I just think that's just a little stupid. And if you want my personal opinion, I actually think Jurassic Park 3 is a better film than Jurassic Park 2, and the reason why I say that is because Jurassic Park 2 was directed by Steven Spielberg, the godfather of the summer blockbuster. So fast forward a couple of years and some complications when getting this film off the ground, because this film I think was supposed to come out back in 2004, 2005. It was a long time ago. We now have Jurassic World. And now, after watching the film, I can say that this is probably the best sequel to Jurassic Park that we have ever gotten. And I know that's not saying much because, well, 2 and 3 are not great, but I do think this is a decent film. Now, one of the very few things that this film has over the first one is that there was more of a focus on the park itself. Like in the first one, it was more like, okay, here's the park, here's a dinosaur, and let's just jump right into the chaos. While this film was more like, okay, we're going to show the audience what Jurassic Park or Jurassic World is like when, you know, it's a good day. And speaking of the original film, which is something that I'm going to be referencing throughout this entire review, is that there are a lot of callbacks to the original film, and some of them are kind of cool, while some of them feel a little too forced and a little distracting. For instance, there's this one scene where a character comments on another character's dirty workstation, which is an obvious callback to Dennis from the original film. But there's one where a little girl is petting a long-necked dinosaur and ends up sneezing on her hand, and it's like, oh, okay, we get it. Now, one of the things I was really hoping to be included at some point in this film is John Williams' original theme. It is in the film, but it's composed by Michael Giacchino. He is no John Williams, but to be fair, nobody is John Williams. Only John Williams is John Williams. But he does do a really good job at filling his shoes, and you could definitely tell he is somebody who has been influenced by John Williams, whether you're listening to this score or his previous work as well. But my problem associated with the theme is how it's utilized in the film. And I say that because the theme is so full of wonderment, it's so majestic, and yet the scene just doesn't really quite fit the music. You go back and you watch the original film and you see and hear how the theme is utilized. It complements the scene. It's the scene where Alan Grant, he's looking out and he sees the long necks for the first time, and then he realizes and he says to himself, they do move in herds, and he starts tearing up. And I've heard people actually getting a little emotional during that scene. You know, it's a very beautiful moment, not because of just the music, because it is beautiful, but because it is a beautiful scene. This is not so much. In Jurassic World, when the music swells up and then it lets out, you see the park for the first time, and it's like, oh, well, that looks kind of cool, I guess. I mean, you know, it wasn't quite that feeling that I got with the original Jurassic Park. And this is where I come into my next complaint. The scene centers around these two kids. One of them is played by Ty Simpkins, who you might recognize from Iron Man 3, and the other one is played by Nick Robinson. And they do play brothers in the film. But one of the reasons I didn't particularly care for these characters is because they are a little bit on the annoying side, especially Ty Simpkins, who is so over the top. When he's not completely dorking out over dinosaurs, which I can kind of understand because they are dinosaurs, he's crying over his parents getting a divorce, which I can kind of understand, but he kind of goes a little overboard with it, and that might be because the film doesn't really go into detail with that sort of thing. They just kind of mention it, and it's like, okay, maybe that's why he's crying so much. And if it's not that, he's crying over the fact that his brother is leaving for college soon. I actually started to wonder if his character was meant to be somebody who had autism, and if that's the case, then cool, but I don't know. And if that is the case, well, maybe they still could have toned it down a notch, because he really was kind of hamming it up. And speaking of over the top, and this is one of my bigger complaints with the film, is that the film is a little too goofy for its own good. Jurassic Park has never been a stranger to goofiness, but I do think this film tries a little too hard to be funny, and not only that, but a lot of the jokes kind of fall flat, especially the stuff involving Bryce Dallas Howard and the kids when they're interacting with one another. It's just painful. However, even though I wouldn't say by a significant margin, I do think more of the comedy works than not, so there's that. But touching on Bryce Dallas Howard, I do think she is good in the film, especially when she is playing the sort of uptight, bitchy sort of character, but later in the film when she is being exposed to a setting that is a little more foreign to her, I'll just kind of leave it at that, she kind of becomes a little bit of a joke. Now, she does have her moment where she does toughen up and everything, and that's really cool to see, but that little segment in between, I again don't think works all too well, especially of course when she is interacting with those kids. Now, her interactions with Chris Pratt, on the other hand, I did enjoy, especially the scene where we first see them interacting with one another. For those who don't know, it is a scene that is out on the internet. It's a scene that Josh Whedon claimed to be 1970s era sexism. I disagree, but I digress. I like the scene because it showcases his character's charisma, his wit. That scene made me want to follow this guy. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Nathan Drake. A lot of people talk about Indiana Jones. I think he'd be a perfect Nathan Drake because he has the look for it. But again, I digress on that as well. After that scene, all that wit, all that charisma just slowly dwindles. It's like that's the wittiest and that's the most charismatic he is in the entire film, unfortunately, when he's not training the raptors. Now, that's kind of cool, something that I actually thought was going to be a bit of a problem, but it served kind of a cool purpose. Though I would have liked to have seen more meat with his character, and I'd like to have seen that wit and charisma be present throughout the entire film. I did like his character more than anybody else in the entire film. If I had to choose a second one, it would be Bryce Dallas Howard. As far as anyone else, unfortunately, I can't really quite say I found myself really rooting for anybody. Now, I did like the performance by Vincent D'Onofrio. Can't really say too much about his character, but I did like him in the film. His character, on the other hand, I thought was kind of a dick, but I'm just going to say that. However, there is this one scene that features this character that I wasn't very fond of, and even though I was not very fond of this character, the way this character dies kind of messed with me a little bit. I was like, wow, that is one hell of a way to go. Now, you might be wondering, what is my opinion of the dinosaurs that are in the film? Well, I think they're pretty cool. However, if you're somebody who has seen my videos before, you might know that this was coming, and here it is. I do think there is too much CGI in the film. Now, I did read up on that animatronics were used in the film. However, I don't know to what extent, because from what I saw, the dinosaurs, they all look computer generated. There might be just one scene that sticks out to me as going like, okay, that might be practical. But there is this one scene that's like an up close and personal shot of this wounded dinosaur. And the whole time I was wondering, I was like, they could have used animatronics here, but it really doesn't look like it's animatronics. It actually looks like it's CGI, and not great CGI at that. Not only that, but the scene is supposed to have some emotional weight. But unfortunately, given that it just looked, well, kind of fake, that effect isn't really there. However, there are some CGI models that do look as if more time and effort was spent into crafting these models versus others. For instance, you have the Indominus Rex, which is the new dinosaur species in the film. And I would say that probably looks the best out of all of them. And the Indominus Rex is something that I found to be pretty cool because she kind of reminded me of the Joker. And the reason why I say that is because She just basically kills for sport, simply. They even say that in the film. There's a scene in the film where she even breaks other dinosaurs open just to simply fuck with people, and that's it. And as for the big climax involving the Indominus Rex, it's really, really cool because it's kind of like a gigantic boxing match between the Indominus Rex and these other dinosaurs, and it's pretty sweet. For anybody who is a fan of Jurassic Park, I think you're going to appreciate it. I am going to wrap this review up, but before I go, I do want to say this. There are some good moments of some Jurassic Park suspense in the movie, however, and this is not necessarily a knock on Jurassic World per se, but I do want to say this. I actually found Godzilla, last year's Godzilla, to be a better Jurassic Park film than this film, and the reason why I say that is because there's better suspense in that film. For instance, you have that scene where the soldiers are on the train tracks trying to hide from one of those monsters. I thought that was great. This film doesn't quite get to that, but there are some good moments, like I said. Overall, Jurassic World is riddled with flaws, but at the same time, though, I was enthralled, I was entertained, I was never once bored by it, and I would say that's probably largely due to the fact that I am a Jurassic Park fan. If it were not for the first film being so good, I don't think this film would stand all too well in my opinion, but if you are somebody who is a fan of the original film, then I think you do owe it to yourself to at least check this film out, because I don't think you'll come out incredibly disappointed or feeling as if that you just lost your money or something like that. I feel like you're going to come out satisfied because it is entertaining. But if you're somebody who has never seen the original film, then I would just recommend staying home and renting that instead, because it's a much better film. I'm going to give Jurassic World a low 3.5 out of 5. And if you're somebody who plans on seeing this film, do let me know. And if you're somebody who has already seen this film, let me know your thoughts on it. And as always, I'm Colin Kirkland, and thank you so much for watching.